Hey everyone, and welcome to the This Sounds Better podcast with myself, Alex Tumay, Miles Walker, and Jason Kingsland. We are here in my favorite studio in Atlanta and maybe the world, Silent Sound. Thank you, TK, for having us here. And
Absolutely.
Thank you
No one
for being the videographer today. So guys, we're here.
We made it.
We did it.
Wow.
The first official This Sounds Better podcast.
Mark 1.
For real, videotaped in a real studio with all three of us in the same place.
That's probably the most impressive part.
Really, because we couldn't do this with all three of us in different places for a month.
That's right.
We've been discussing this for 4 months, y'all.
Yep.
It's very true. I think the discussions
Great.
have gotten better and made their way into the curriculum here. So there's that.
Totally. So what are you guys working on right now?
I am starting a record with a relatively secretive artist, but just started doing the project for the last 10 days or so. So just nice and crisp right now, which has been great. And did 10 days of tracking, did some songs, had some really cool producing moments.
Oh, this is great. You're producing as well.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, producing. And so I was actually telling you about this last night, but we had a little bit of a moment where we were kind of just trying to find a mantra for the entirety of the process. You know, what's our dream board for the record, or
For sure.
fashion guide or whatever. And so the dude had gotten into this very specific kind of animation style, and so we just started looping it throughout the session in the background. And it was actually kind of sick because when the music sounded like the picture looked, when it basically looked like we were scoring this animation,
Right.
it's done.
You
It's
get
great.
a Gorillas moment, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so it's you're kind of able to reverse engineer something into working, and it worked like a charm.
I think
That's crazy.
I think Tumay does that with Gordy.
Yeah.
Based on his image.
Based on how excited Gordy is,
Right.
is when I stop mixing. It has nothing to do with whether I like it anymore or not. It's there's so much 8K in this mix, but he likes it,
Exactly.
Print it. Let's go.
He's got the ear. So, well, I've been fortunate enough to keep doing some things for Ultra Records right now. Steve Aoki just released his third Neon Future, which I was able to do a lot on, and that man stays busy. So we got some more stuff coming, hopefully, that everybody be really excited about. Really good new stuff from Cascade as well that we're working on. Just great tunes. Very happy to be working with a lot of different people and stuff coming out all the time.
So some background on the two of you. Miles is mostly, I would say, a pop guy.
I like pop music.
Mixing pop music. And Jason is mainly an indie rock guy, mixing rock music. Some pop, but mostly staying in the rock lane. And myself, obviously, doing mostly rap. And I think that gives us all a very unique perspective on engineering itself and music and how we all work. And pivoting from that, I want to talk about one of the main questions I've gotten, which is how do we manage our time and how do we freelance and how do we keep ourselves going? And for myself, it's breaks. Always. I'm constantly making sure that I'm leaving the studio, which is my bedroom, and getting out there and being in the world and interacting with people and leaving my small space, which is where I live and work. For myself, I guess the biggest problem is making sure that I have regimented this time of the day to work, this time of the day to enjoy myself, this time of day to pay attention to the dog. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's important to kind of give yourself a schedule and keep yourself in line in a world where you can literally do whatever you want. You could work 18 hours a day. You could work 24 hours a day. No one's going to stop you. But you have to give yourself breaks and you have to keep yourself in line so you don't A, burn out, or B, get forgotten about.
You bring up something real interesting for me that you were talking about working at your place, and it's important to get out of there. I used to have my studio in my house too, and it was the same thing. I was doing records, and they were taking 2 and 3 and 4 times as long as I knew they should take because I would get distracted by something on the DVR or got to do laundry real quick or let me run to the grocery store. So when I moved to a studio and had a place to get up and go to work, it really helped me be more productive because it was like you said, I could turn it on and off from this time to that time. And I had the flexibility to pick when I would go in and when I would leave. But when I was there, I was working hard. I wasn't playing around. And then when I left, I was done for the day. And I'll catch you tomorrow if you need anything else. So that was a big help for me personally.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I've definitely moved out of that world, too, where, like, for the longest time, if I was mixing kind of more independent release stuff, I was definitely doing it at my house and trying to maintain the balance of, like, gotta do laundry today or whatever. It has always gotten in the way. And the main thing I've kind of found is, like, I try to really strategize, like, to me, like, the big stuff is, like, the offline use of time. The stuff that we all have to do, like, phone calls, like professional, and even just like, you know, you got to call like mom or dad or whatever, you know, and taking care of like that and like emails and like checking like every variety of like social media just to like have some type of basically a response. Like, so I actually try and like section off my time so that like right now my studio is probably about 35 to 40 minutes away from my house, which is great because each way I now have 35 minutes to make phone calls. And so I know if I've got 6 phone calls I got to make.
You plan them accordingly.
Play it accordingly.
Love it.
And so like I'm trying to figure out how to like break all that time up so I walk in the door, I am ready to work. Not get in the studio and now like I'm kind of at the studio and I got like some phone calls, some catch-up stuff, and like then you're 2 hours in or like an hour in before you're even sitting down to get something done.
That's like what Alex was saying. When you can set a schedule for yourself, you know you got your commute. Let me use this time. You know, Gordy got to go out and pee on a tree. Let me set this time. You know, you can really make the most of whatever you're doing, so it's all killer, no filler.
I think it's crazy how much having a dog has changed how I work.
And for better.
Yeah.
For the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's unbelievably better how much my life has gotten since I've gotten a dog. And that's why I bring him everywhere. And that's why I credit him on albums. Because, and it's crazy, but having something that tells you, okay, it's this time of day. I don't care what you're doing. It's time to leave. Like, it's time to leave the house. It's time to feed me. It's time to do this. Like, it's bringing you back into the regular world because you can get lost in the music world.
Yeah. It's built in ear breaks, too. Built-in ear breaks, which are great. Because a lot of people forget to take those when you're, like, zoned in on a record. That's really good.
And then the other thing that I've been working on now is getting out of the house. Like, for me, both of you guys have studio spaces, and I'm now on that. I'm burnt out on being home. I'm burnt out on being in the same space. There is no separation. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I always thought it wasn't that important, you know? But, you know, now 10 years into my career, the one thing I miss the most is having a space for work where, like you said, I'm mentally here. I'm here at work, and then having your space, you come home, you decompress. And that's starting to become such an important thing as, you know, I'm getting old.
Well, you can also feed off other people's creative energy because, like, we're all creative people. Yeah. We all have our own creative vision whenever we're working on a mix or a record. But when it's just your own creativity you're exposed to, that's the only well you're pulling from. But if you're around other people, you can kind of get other ideas or even just be in the kitchen talking about something about, oh, you heard this record? No, I hadn't heard it. And then that kind of gets you a whole new place to pull ideas from.
Well, different people. I think the last thing that, and this is maybe just a me thing, but like when I'm working at home, like when I get into a record, when I'm really now, like, you know, there's usually like that kind of maybe you're going to go in and sniff around on like the first track and kind of bad at it. Or at least this is how I work. I might bad at kind of like the first one and then like maybe like song 2, like now I'm in the record. Like I know I get it.
Right.
And so like for me, when I was working at home, what I would find is like, I would sit at home for like 2-3 days working on this thing. And like, you know, I could go cycle through songs and just kind of keep refreshing myself on this record. And I'd get to like day 3 or 4 and like, why do I feel insane? I feel absolutely out of my fucking mind here. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen anyone for like 3 days. Like I have to go like be a part of this world and still participate if I'm going to make shit that's supposed to be relevant to culture. Because if I'm not participating in culture, how am I supposed to have any like milestone of what that is?
And I don't know if you guys experience this, which is kind of tangential, but the ups and downs of freelancing itself, not even like what you're doing for work, but like you spend, I don't know, like recently I spent a month on a record.
Sure, yeah.
And then they decided they don't want to do it anymore. That's it.
Yeah. The stuff that sits on the shelf, not letting it bum you out.
It's really easy to get bummed out when you're that close to your bed. Like, I'm like, let me just crawl the fuck back in the bed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it for me. Like,
you know what's always
Can't
crazy?
believe I got out of bed for this.
Yeah.
What's crazy about the exact thing you're talking about too? My coolest records, like the ones I'm like, dude, that
100%.
shit is awesome, are all the ones that are sitting on the shelf.
This is my favorite record I've ever done.
On
On
the
top
shelf.
of everything else, probably won't come out. Best mixes I've ever done, bar none. And I will play them for you after this. These are the coolest songs.
Nice.
And it's just most likely will never come out.
You know, someone talked about being an engineer and how it's like being a parent to kids. You know, you can try and do everything and teach them and everything you want to do and give them a good life. But ultimately, they're going to be their own people. Records are going to be their own thing. And if they decide to go sit on the shelf or go down in flames or something crazy happens and you know you tried your best, you just got to let it happen, man. I mean, and you know, disappointed, but on to the next one. And hey, now we got at least a podcast to talk about some of the ones that didn't go.
This is now therapy for me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm charging Alex by the minute.
Yeah. The other main question I have from these young engineers that are coming up is the business side, coming up and being like either you were an intern, you were an assistant, and now people are asking you to work more. And how do you even broach the topic of I need money now? And for me, it was awkward. For me, because I was friends with all these people and I was working for free to learn and to build the clientele. And then I was like, oh man, it's really hard to pay my bills off just what the studio is paying me to show up every day. And so I'm mixing all these records and I'm recording all these songs and I need to figure out how to say, hey guys, now it's money time. Like I've done 500 records for you just for fun.
Yeah, that street
fun is over.
That street cred is nice, but that bank cred is real deal. So I think one tool that I didn't ever get in school, and I had a great education at Berkeley, but no one talked about invoicing or broaching the topic of money. And, there's some really great tools out there like PayPal and stuff like that. So even if you're not familiar with an invoice, you can literally just find a template. But speak to other engineers and be like, what is it that I need to make sure is included? Usually.
Like, what's a PO?
Yeah, exactly. POs
I had no idea.
Really important.
I thought if I sent the invoice, that was it.
Yeah, you're not getting paid without a PO.
Invoice doesn't matter.
That's right.
They have to be like, here's the PO number, because that means that they've already put the money aside for you.
Right. For anybody that doesn't know this listening, PO stands for paid order, which is basically a system that companies will do to administer money before the work happens. And it's usually followed by a number or something like that. And if you have that and that's reflected on your invoice, they're able to move it to accounting, and accounting then pays you. So for major labels, it's very common to need the PO just to make sure the work is approved. Even if you're working with an A&R, there could be an admin involved that would help you make sure you get that PO number and you can send the invoice to the correct
And
place.
now they want more labels. Now, before you're paid, they want the stems. They want the whole session. They want every type of print. Back in the day, it was just the prints. And then maybe the stems if they were going to perform it.
Well, I think deliverables are changing as the needs of the artists are changing. So it's important to know that.
Either that or they're trying to, create a database of all the mixes so that an AI can, replace us at some point.
Oh, yeah, we did in no time.
That's real. I lose sleep over that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that there's a multitude of facets to this, right? So there's just the straightforward, how do I PO a label? How do I send an invoice over? But then there's literally just the basic layer of going from
no money.
I am not worth money in my own mind or in other people's minds.
I see.
To I am worth money and my time is worth something. I feel like that if you would like me to sit in this room with you, you have to make some fiscal investment into me.
And I think the most important thing to becoming a successful person in general, but especially in engineering, is knowing your value. You have to be aware of it. You have to know when you're not worth any money.
Yeah.
And then you have to know when you are. And you have to know how to politely be like, I'm worth money now because you keep coming back.
That's the Don Draper quote. If you're good at something, don't do it for free.
Yep.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, though. Like, I would say that this is a little different because, like, if you're an advertising exec, right, and you're a 20-year-old, it's like, I really want to do advertising, right? At the end of the day, I'm sure there is someone who, like, loves advertising, but, like, no one gets into advertising to love it for free, right?
Yep.
Fair enough.
Like, there is myself included, like, when I got into music, the confusing part about, like, knowing when to charge was that I loved it, and I was just going to do it
no matter
regardless.
What. Right.
I was definitely the annoying intern. Like, I showed up every day. I could be not on the schedule to show up. My ass was there. And, like, just doing anything I could to, like, sliding on that session, make sure that, like, I was going to be, like, noticed by someone in management or whatever. Like, I was going to put in my time way in a way that I could never be compensated for it. You know, like, there was no money that would be commensurate with the amount of time that was there. But I learned a lot doing that. And I found that when you are worth money, if you are in a room with people who are also worth being in business with, you will be compensated.
Right.
That is the ultimate thing I found.
The right clients value your time.
That's right.
And they'll let you know sometimes. Not all the time. But if you do speak up, they'll be like, oh, we've been waiting for you to say that.
Right.
Sure.
And I mean, I was the same way as you. I mean, I interned for you, basically, Jason. Like, I was the same. I was there 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Even when I did not have to be there. And even if I was just sitting around watching what people were doing, I was there. I was like, I want to be here, you know? And then when it came time to start getting paid for assisting, luckily we had Ben offer up like a day rate for an assistant. And then when it came time to like go somewhere else and start working, I had to restart and I didn't know what my value was at the time. I thought I was worth $0 as an engineer, but I was really good at running a studio, so I was getting paid to run the studio.
Right.
And then people were like, oh, you're a good engineer. And they were kicking paid engineers out for me. And I was like, can I have that guy's money? Like,
Sure.
That guy went home. You're still paying him.
You also brought up a good technique that's useful for anybody who's transitioning from intern to whatever it is. You know, if maybe they're full up on staff of assistants or even paid engineers, you're like, well, I'm also good at running the studio. Maybe I could be a paid studio manager in the interim. And I think creating your own job is also the best way to get paid. When you do a job that no one else around you can do, you don't have to worry about getting paid, or you don't have to get worried about being fired.
Well, and I think that there's a really easy guideline, and I follow this internally with anyone that like is working under me on a project, which is basically like, my internal metric is if I'm making money off of their labor, they will get paid.
I like that
and
too.
I think that it's really healthy that if you are in the position and you have the wherewithal to realize that someone else is making money off of my labor, like not like in like, oh, well, I'm getting coffee for this guy who's going to go put this vocal on this track. Like he's going to make money on this track, but like literally directly my labor is making someone money. Yeah. Like these vocals got edited, this drum part got tweaked up, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Melodyne,
whatever. Then like it's worth talking about like, hey, that was worth money. That literally made you money, what I did. So like I think that asking for a piece of the action, regardless of what point in your career you're at, is intelligent.
And the people who say no, I learned this again from Ben Allen. The people who say no, we're never gonna pay you.
That's right.
Yeah. They were never like if you ask for money and the person is like maybe later, leave.
Yeah.
Because later is never.
Unless they have a valid excuse, there is no valid excuse. You know, I mean, if you're doing that level of work,
if you're engineering, really if you're recording,
that's right.
And you were doing that level of engineering, if you were assisting, if you're wiring stuff up, like at that point, if they're trusting you to set up a whole entire session and save them, I don't know, 4 hours of time a day.
Yeah.
That's 4 hours of time that you should be getting paid for.
Well, and I think that the last sidebar of this is knowing what to charge. And really, this is a universal, like, at this exact point in time, somewhere in the back of my mind is like, how much should I charge for this?
Yeah, sure.
And, like, it's the same question I've had for 15 years. So how much money should I even make for this? And I suppose it really ends in how you feel about yourself and your career and, like, where your credits are and, what is your labor commensurate with versus other people roughly in your same stature. But at the end of it, what do you charge? What metric do you follow?
There's a lot of schools of thought on this one, but one that I try and subscribe to myself is what's a number that I think literally everybody involved in this process is going to be okay with?
Yeah.
Myself included. I'm like, this is enough money to make me happy. But also, it's a competitive thing to my client to be like, I'm not just out here roasting you, dog. I look at the market and I think I'm fair, so and so forth. I have overhead. I have a studio bill. I have an assistant that I pay. They're all getting paid appropriately within that. And I'm still able to be like, and I can set aside this for my taxes. And everybody feels good. That's a great number to shoot for. And that number can change per project based on maybe the way you feel about the project, the timeline, there's the deliverables. Maybe you can keep the number the same but change how long it's going to take you, But the one thing I don't ever change is the quality of effort I'm going to put into it.
Oh, no.
Right.
You're always going to get 100%. It might just take you longer if, the budget is a problem. It'll just take me longer to get there.
If it's a freebie, I'm still giving you
100%.
100%.
That's the only setting I have.
And I think as far as rates, I think we all have our rate that we want, In my head, I have this number for all label projects, this amount per mix or this amount per hour. And then depending on how good the project is, to be honest, and how friendly the people are and what I know their budget probably is, because the more you go into the industry and the more you have your price, what the label's willing to spend on certain artists, because if there's a big hit out there, you should get what you want. You know what I mean?
Well,
that artist has that budget.
I also think, that's when things like, how fast do they need it?
Yeah.
What level of deliverables are they needing?
100%.
How much time is this going to take me to do? Is it, you're going to take the first pass and, keep it moving? Or is it like, we know that there's some back and forth and there's going to be a lot of revisions? You have to factor all that in. And, I think that's fair, like you said, depending on where the artist's budget might be, how many times you've worked with them in the past, how many times the label as a client has worked with you so they know they can count on you. There's value in a repeat customer knowing that they're like, we're coming to you first because we know you're going to get it done. And I'm like, I appreciate that. So I'm going to give you some consideration on that price as well for coming back. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff all factors in, I think.
And just for everybody out there, I think baseline, as an engineer, if you are recording and you are good and you're putting a good rough mix out there, $25 an hour minimum.
I mean, I can't even speak to, again.
That's what the going rate for a engineer who's pressing 3 is for labels.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Certainly not less.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I agree.
And so if you think you're worth getting paid, start there.
Yeah, sure.
Now, if you think you can go up from there, for example, if you live in New York, do not start $25 an hour.
Well, I was gonna say that, based on cities and where people live, obviously people have different overhead and tax concerns and cost of living. So you do have to factor all that in. But anytime you're talking about going up from whatever the base number is, I think it's important to have really honest conversations if you can with your contemporaries.
Definitely.
Right.
And if you know where they're at and you feel like you're in the same place, great. And if you find out you're way off, high or low, that could answer a lot of questions for you, why you're getting a ton of work or why you're getting no work or something in the middle, being like that goes back to that being fair. If it's a fair price, people are going to be fine to pay.
Here's something.
And here's something I actually would throw out too that I've been working on is the method of how to say yes, right? So meaning that at the end of the day, you are selling time.
Sure, yeah.
You're basically selling technically 2 things. You're selling 2 channels, left and right.
Yep.
And you're selling time.
But that left channel, though.
That left channel, dog. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of like the right.
My left channel actually costs more than my right channel because my left ear is slightly better. So,
but within that, there's a multitude of different things that can happen, right? So, let's say, and this could hold true in any world too. It not just some indie rock record that I'm working on, but say for you, and I've been doing this recently. Is well, you want me to mix on this, but your budget is just not really commensurate with something that I'm necessarily feeling, right? And I know that when you're looking at your session, it's an 80-track session, right?
Sure.
And they say, well, we've got X number, and I'm just going this really isn't going to work. So what I've been actually trying recently is be send me 10 stems.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? Send me a track count that's going to be commensurate with your budget, and know where you're at. Now, we have to have a very cut and dry understanding of what that is. But like now, if you cut down on my labor and you're saying, I want to get the most out of it at this rate, and I can do it and feel like I am still getting a quality that I feel comfortable with. Because, at the end of the day with mixing, as we all well know, it's a comparative metric of where it came from, what the artist wants, and to where it can go feasibly, right? And like that you want to take it as far as it can go. And so to me, in a lot of ways, saying that like, all right, I'm going to start with a more limited starting point, but I know how to really maximize that versus like you want me to just go pick over all like 120 tracks your session. Those are completely different jobs to me. And like it's something that I've recently been offering to more select clients that I like as like a repeat client or something else. And so I found that there can be a lot of utility in trying to figure out how to make jobs work for someone.
Sure.
And find creative ways of being able to say, yes, I will do this job, but under X auspice will I do it.
That's nice. I mean, that seems like a more advanced technique to offer your clients, but a good one.
I think that
because you functionally keep your quality level high, but what you've done is you've cut down on your time quotient of it.
Right.
Whereas like I'm like, well, for this budget, it's going to take me 2 months. They're like, God, we got to have it sooner than 2 months. You'll be like, well, why don't you do a premix to 10 stems and then I can get it to you this week or something. So it's good to look at like what people are working with to make their project happen and you offering solutions as opposed to just being like, no.
Right.
The money's not there.
And I've found that that's the number one thing for selling people is if you can figure out how to say yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
That gets you somewhere so much faster.
Nice.
And honestly, at the end of the day, that's the basic fundamental underlining premise of what we do is saying yes. Right? Like,
yeah.
Like, oh, dude, can you record me in XYZ crazy format? Like, if you say no, that might be okay, but that might really put someone off.
Yep.
Like, my basic vibe is like, how do I say yes? How do I get in on this?
Totally.
Power of yes.
And I think that Jason's approach is so interesting to me because it's not something I can really do in the rap world. In the rap world, there's already limited stems.
Sure.
You need all of them. And then the vocal stems, like if you don't have the raw Pro Tools vocal files to fix,
it's gonna be
it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
Like whenever I get a 2-track of vocals, it doesn't turn out as good as if I get
a track out.
The track out of everything with raw stems, mixed stems, etc. So I can like hear what they did, do my own thing, keep the vibe, and maintain what they were doing, but at a higher level of quality. Like it's not gonna turn out well. I can't do that. At least not in rap.
Well, would the parallel, and this isn't the parallel, but, a 2-track instrumental, that really, really limits what you can contribute as a mix engineer.
Yeah.
But, and maybe it's a way to meet them in the middle. It's not preferred, but I just like the forward-thinking aspect of your, like, instead of just saying no, let's work to a collaborative yes.
Right. And the thing is, like, there's certain things like I couldn't do that. Like, there's certain things that definitely be like, well, that's a no-go. I can't go to this level of extreme. But like, if there is a healthy middle ground, if there is that point that you can hit where you can find a quality that you feel comfortable with that meets their time, budget, whatever constraints they have, sometimes that'll work better,
With still protecting your own brand, like Alex was like, it's not going to sound like one of my mixes if you give me an acapella. It's just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So, I get that you got to walk that line, but try and be.
I've done both. And I think at the end of the day, we all do what we have to with what we get.
Sure.
If we get a 2-track MP3 and a 2-track vocal, which I've gotten, I just do what I have to do with it. I'm going to make it sound the best I can and fix all the problems the best I can.
Right.
And we're going to put the best product we can put out with 2 tracks.
Yep.
Right? With 2 tracks.
But that left channel, though.
Yeah, the left channel is going to be better.
Right.
I hate to say it, but it's going to happen. The last thing I want to touch on this part of the episode is the main question that I get for people that are starting to come up now is how do I get points?
Ooh.
And that is as someone who just got some for the first time, really 10 years in after a bunch of big projects, I don't know what to tell you because it's so. And I know Miles probably has a lot more experience with that.
My experience is be 10 years in,
Yeah.
do a lot of
Yeah.
big projects,
Yeah.
Yeah.
consider asking for points.
Yeah.
And I know that's not really fair or really helpful to people that want to do it. But the number one thing I'll say is this, is if people have been a little bit tighter with their budgets, if they do come with like a number that no amount of stems,
Yeah.
no amount of 2 tracks is ever going to happen. But for you as an engineer, you're like excited about the project.
Points.
At that point, a conversation about, listen, I know you got no money and I know you need it and I'd like to be a part of it because I really like it. Would you be willing to talk about points? It's not a comfortable or even standard thing for engineers to bring up. Producers probably more. And actually, I'd be really interested to see what you think because of the way you contribute it when you're producing as well as engineering a project. But for a straight ahead mixer, or something like that, even are you doing additional vocal production? If there's any kind of way to like repackage it so that it's a stronger thing than just mixing, because there's probably 5 dudes on the planet for just mixing that are getting points, and God
regular, yeah.
and God bless them. I love those guys, but it's not something that I'm going to think about as my first, second, or even third choice. I'm going to talk about stems. I'm going to talk about timeline.
Yeah.
But
for me right now, when I get points is when someone doesn't want to pay the rate.
yeah, that's pretty common.
That's it.
I'd say that's the same thing.
If
with
I'm
myself.
dropping down like 40% on my mix rate,
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, hey, man,
Yeah, right.
can I please?
And if they value you being a part of the project that much, it shouldn't be something that they're going to be completely caught off guard with because they really do want you to be a part of it.
And-
Maybe.
So another question for clarity for everyone listening. People want to know what a point is.
Hang on. Can I back up to the last question real quick? So actually, I have a little bit of thought on it that I think is maybe
please.
a different vantage than what you guys have, right? Because here's the thing with points that I think is a very important point to make, is that like... yeah.
Physical jokes on a podcast. You're killing it, Miles.
Silent
It's okay, we
physical
got it,
jokes.
we got it.
Yeah. So Miles did a little Buddy Rich over there. So points are theoretical money.
Yep.
So internally, points become a point of pride at a certain point in your conversation. And to me, I should never have pride about what I think that you owe me.
Yeah.
I am not I don't want to have that kind of relationship with my clients. I feel like it's a little uncomfortable. I don't like feeling like I'm the principal or some shit like that,
Sure.
And so to me, in a lot of ways with points, when I feel like a point is going to maybe be in a discussion or a topic that could come up, I kind of also have to be in the position of being like, is this actually going to be worth money? Right? Because it's really land speculation at the end of the day. It's like, is this record going to make enough money that's going to get past the recoup point, that it's going to get to a level that's going to actually make me money back on it? And am I going to be able to collect on it? Because like you could maybe, if someone just spends no money on their record and they sell, I don't know, 2,000 units, like just some like really small record, but like they spent some cash, but not a ton. Like you could maybe make some money back on the points. Are you going to collect it?
Right. Do you have an admin
Do you
publisher?
have-
to
do you
look
have
this?
publisher?
Yeah,
Did
that's
you
right,
have
that's
some
right.
way of getting that money back? Like, well, if the answer is no, then why ask? It's only a point of pride at that point.
Right.
It's only theoretical money that you're discussing.
That actually brings up a good point, which I think is tying into what is a point also, which is like at that conversation junction, you need to, it's so many points, right?
Yeah, it's points.
Yeah, it's
points about points.
The pointiest points is what's the plan for the record? Because historically, a point for mixers even was on the mechanical sales.
Yep.
Who's selling a record physically these days? Maybe, you got some indie
Right.
guys that are pressing up some vinyl. That's good to know because indie guys selling vinyl that are going to hit the road, they might move some units, within their lane. That is a point I'd be interested in. People who know they are not even going to manufacture a physical and they're
Yep.
like, we'll give you a point on manufacturing. It's like, so you're guaranteeing me getting no money on this.
Yep.
Right.
So you need to know what you're talking about.
Yep.
The point you want, guys, is publishing, but that becomes a rub because then you're actually splitting up something with the songwriter, which may or may not be the same artist
Yep.
that's offering you a point on their project.
Right.
I definitely don't want to take any money out of somebody else who wasn't part of the conversations money, and that is how songwriters make their livelihood, through that publishing.
Right.
Just because they decided they wanted me as their mixer and didn't have their budget together. So it's one of the reasons why I do not like asking for points. But if you're going to get it, you need to be clear on what that point entails.
And to close this topic, I will say at this part of your career, you should have a manager.
Yeah, that's true.
And
I
they
agree
should
with
be
that.
negotiating
Yeah.
these things for you because you asking it yourself will never go well.
I agree
You
with
will
that. I
only
agree with
offend people. I've tried it and literally they just are like, okay, cool. Fuck you, bye. Like, that's
that.
it.
Sure.
And here's one last thing I'd point out about points. Jesus Christ, twice.
Still so good.
God, every time. Yeah. So if you're working on records in which really your involvement becomes contingent on points, you're working on the wrong fucking records. To me, that should never be your make or break point on doing it. And if you have not figured out how to charge in a way that's commensurate with your service, sans points, fuck it. You're doing it wrong. Reset. Wipe the board. Do it another way. Because it really shouldn't be anything that becomes that intensive for you.
Or if like there's no money and this is all they can offer, to your statement earlier about like being creative, talk about points of merchandise or other avenues that maybe you actually will get 360 points, right?
Pub.
And again, if you are doing this, you're probably taking the wrong project. But if you do, make sure you got a manager and a lawyer who can sort this out because it's not going to go over well.
100%. So I think that does it for this part of the podcast.
Outstanding.
So thank you everybody for tuning in. We have been Alex, Miles, and Jason, and we are the This Sounds Better podcast at Silent Sound Studios. And thank you again, TK.